Alrighty, Adam White from CapTech Consulting here again. I wanted to show off a little action that I had some help with Reagan Walker over at CapTech as well. So I had an interesting use case on a client where we had to delete some old files. Now, traditionally, this would be done using scheduled Apex or just Apex in general, but not so with flow invoked actions. So I wanted to show off a new action called add fields to quotes. That's a tongue twister. Um, and in combination with a couple other actions that have been updated recently on unofficial SF. So I'll get started with the first scenario. I have step-by-steps in the article, but I figured it would be helpful to have a little video on it. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to schedule our execute sockle action. This is probably my favorite action out there right now. It's so flexible. Specify your output object, which in this case is going to be content document. And if you haven't already, I would definitely do some research on the file structure on content document link, and content version. It's going to be helpful to understand what's going on here. So with this action, you just throw in a sockle query. In this case, it's just a text template variable. Then you specify, well, you don't necessarily have to, but I like to, specify your output variable here, which should be of the same record, or of the same object type. So just to drill into that query there, the use case here is we want to find files that have been posted by community users and are older than a certain amount of days. In this case, we query on the content document object, and we look to see that the created date for that file is older than 730 days ago, aka 2 years. And the created by's profile is the community login user. So all is possible with the sockle query here. So we throw that into the action. And I make note of this in the article, but if you're using an older version of execute sockle, if it doesn't find anything, it returns an empty string or empty collection. So that's different from being null. So in order to actually do a null check or an empty results check on it, you have to assign what it finds to a number here. So we do that here, and then we do a decision off of that number. So we just want to make sure that it finds greater than 0 records. So pretty simple. We look for those files and then we delete them. You could also archive them or do whatever with them. So the other step, other scenario here is a little more complicated. So let's take a scenario where you want to find files that have been posted to certain account types. And you could apply this to tasks, contacts, whatever object. It doesn't really matter. So your steps are going to be somewhat similar, but we're going to highlight a couple of new actions here. So we go in here to our execute sockle action. You can see we're actually now querying on content document link, because you can't use subqueries directly on content document, so you have to get there kind of sideways. So we'll throw in this query here. I'll open that up. So we're looking at grabbing the content document ID from content document link. So we really only care about the content documents themselves, not the links to the documents. Where the related content documents created date is older than X number of days. In this case, I don't know, just 5. It doesn't really matter. It could be 720 like the example before. And then where the linked entity ID, which is basically the parent to the file in this case, where the ID matches this subquery in here, or a relationship query in here. So we want to return the ID, so it has to match this relationship here. We have to return the ID from account where the type is customer direct. Now, this is just a random example from my sandbox, but you get the gist. So that same deal here, we want to assign it to a number in case there's any nulls. Did we find any content document links? So here's the new stuff. So we actually, a couple days ago, I posted about an action that we had made a while back called dedupe fields from collection, which actually ended up kind of just duplicating what this extract strings from collection processor does. That has been posted a long time ago, only it didn't return, or only it returned duplicates, so we wanted to make that a parameter within this new one. And then we also wanted to add in a new output to strings instead of just a string collection. So this is the extract strings from collection version 2. So we'll run that on the content document link collection we just queried for. We want to dedupe the content document IDs just in case there are duplicates in there. And we want to have this be our input, which is the execute SOQL results. And we want dedupe values as true, so because we don't want to return duplicate content document IDs. And then we throw the comma separated string into a text variable here. So this new action that we wrote up, we thought it'd be really helpful to pair with execute SOQL, because with execute SOQL you could do things like where ID in, and then for each of those IDs you have to encapsulate it within quotes. So we thought it'd be cool to do that with this action here. So we basically take that string that we had outputted from the previous step, and then you don't necessarily need to set a quote type since it defaults to single quotes. And then you output it to this new text string called text quoted content document IDs. And then that's going to give you a nice clean set of IDs that you can use for your next query, which is going to be grabbing all of the content documents that were in this first query. So pretty straightforward here. We just want the IDs because we're going to generate a record collection with just IDs in them. That's all we need for a delete operation. Where ID in, and then your text quoted content document IDs. So we've run this. Now let me make sure the version is this version saved. So debug. All done. So if we go into our debug here, we found 10 results. So we dedupe this content document link collection into, now we have this nice clean string of IDs. And we run our add quotes action here. So this puts quotes around each of the IDs, and then it's ready to throw into the SOQL query. So you can see it generated here. Select ID from content document, where ID in, and then each of the IDs, and then you have your collection ready to delete. Hope you guys found this helpful.